Hey class, welcome to week 4 of COMM 313. I want to go over a few things before we dive into today's lecture, just so that way everybody's on the same page. Keep in mind for our course schedule this week, you do have quiz number 1, which is chapters 1 through 3 to complete this week. It is due by 9:25, which is next Wednesday, which is the final day of week 4 by 11:55 p.m. And this week we are just going to review chapters 4 and 5. As a reminder for next week, please keep in mind we do have a discussion form to complete. You will have the main post and 2 responses to complete for the discussion form, and your main post is going to be due by Sunday night. So make sure to log in early in the week. Log in, Thursday afternoon, Friday or Saturday, Sunday the latest to get your main post posted, and then your response posts are going to be due by the end of the week, Wednesday, which is October 2nd by 11:55 p.m. So let's take a look for this week. During this week, we are going to review chapters 4 and 5, so please make sure to read the chapters before you watch this video lecture. You are also going to have your quiz to complete, which is on chapters 1 through 3. It's going to be 10 questions, 2.5 points each, 5 true false, 5 multiple choice. You will have 10 minutes to complete it. You can use your books and any notes for the quiz. This is going to be due by the end of the week, which is Wednesday, September 25th. And in order to complete the quiz, you can either click on quiz number 1 right here, or you can click on tests and quizzes on this link here and complete quiz number 1. You will only have 1 attempt to complete the quiz and 10 minutes. So please make sure you are ready to take the quiz when it begins. You have good internet and there are no issues. Alright, so let's go ahead and dive into chapter 4 lecture and then the chapter 5 lecture. Please keep in mind these chapter lectures were recorded in the previous semester, so if there are any references to any dates, please go ahead and disregard. Thanks guys. Good luck to you all this week, and good luck on the quiz as well, and please enjoy your chapter 4 and chapter 5 lectures. So chapter 4 talks about stakeholder management and communication. It's going to discuss the introduction of the concept of stakeholders and overview of models used by organizations for communicating and collaborating with stakeholders. But today we're going to look into this a little bit more into detail, the introduction of the concept of stakeholders. So stakeholder initiatives, this is the range of schemes and initiatives have developed at industry, national, and transnational level, such as UN Global Compact Initiative, Global Reporting Initiatives. You have all these different initiatives among stakeholders. Then you have your stakeholder management, and your book discusses 2 different types of theories, the neoclassical and the socioeconomic. The neoclassical is, purpose of an organization to make profits. The socioeconomic is, other groups besides shareholders count, and so on and so on. So here's your neoclassical model. You have your organization, and then you have your investors, employees, and suppliers all working for the organization. Goes into the customers. Here in your in the stakeholder model, so here you can see you have your government, your investor, your political groups. These are all considered stakeholders of the actual organization. So keep that in mind. You have so many different types of stakeholders. And the nature of stakes and stakeholders, pretty important for our class because we're going to be talking about stakeholders quite a bit. So make sure you have a good understanding of a stakeholder and what a stake is as well. And of course, you have different types of stakes, people who are in it for the equity, maybe economic or market shares, or even the influencer stakes. And you can see here you have your descriptions and example of what kind of stakeholder that this might be. So let's take a look at the types of stakeholders. You have a primary stakeholder and a secondary stakeholder. So a primary stakeholder is someone who, without their continued participation, the organization cannot survive, such as employees, suppliers, consumers. These are all people that make the organization go round. Then you have your secondary stakeholder. These can generally influence or affect or are influenced or affected by the organization, such as media or special interest groups. These are more of secondary stakeholders in an organization. And you have your contractual stakeholders and your community stakeholders as well, such as for customers, it's consumers, employees are regulators, distributors are government, and so on and so on. But the benefits of the stakeholder model is really to be a good citizen as an end in itself, have good employee morale, and of course reputation of organization. So your CSR initiatives, you have direct outcome of shift in models, includes a philanthropy, community involvement, ethical and environmental friendly business practices, and it recognizes business needs to deliver wider values beyond shareholder market value alone. So when you're looking at the basic stakeholder identification analysis, there are a few questions you can ask yourself. Who are the organization stakeholders? Then you're going to go a little deeper. What are their stakes? What opportunity and challenges do they have? Then what responsibilities? And then, of course, in what way can an organization best communicate? So here we could see our stakeholder salience model. We have power, legitimacy, and urgency. And when all three of these meet, you have your definitive stakeholder. This is the most important stakeholder here. If you have a stakeholder that has urgency and power, they're going to be a little bit more dangerous on this side. And then if you have one with power who is also legitimate, this is your dominant stakeholder, which is pretty much one of your most important ones. For stakeholder communication from awareness to commitment, it's good to have a good understanding of the tactics and the type of strategy, and then, of course, the understanding of it, the involvement, and, of course, the commitment. And organization stakeholders have a communication model. So this is informational strategy. It's a one-way symmetrical model. This is when the organization just communicates to a stakeholder. It's just providing information. Here we have a persuasive strategy. It's a two-way asymmetrical model. So the organization, communicates to the stakeholder, and then you're going to get feedback, which may come from this information here, all depending on what that information here is. Then you have your dialogue strategy. This is really just two-way symmetrical model of communication, where the organization and the stakeholder are communicating back and forth with one another. And so here you can see that you have the characteristics of the old and new approaches to organization, where you have it with your stakeholder management, stakeholder collaboration. This isn't something you really need to look into too deeply, but have a good understanding of it. And then, of course, with collaboration and engagement, you want to focus on changing the relationship between the organization and its stakeholders, from management to collaboration, and from exchange to long-term relationships. This really helps build the structure of the organization. And then collaboration implies a two-way symmetrical model of dialogue and consultation when you're dealing with stakeholders. The corporate identity, branding, and corporate reputation. So of course we're going to look at the corporate identity management, then establishing, maintaining, and protecting corporate reputations with different stakeholder groups. So corporate identity, strategically projecting a particular positive image of the organization. Also to build, maintain, and protect strong reputations with stakeholders. Leads to stakeholders accepting and supporting an organization, and it gives organizations first choice status with investors, customers, employees, and other stakeholders. So your corporate identity is going to be dependent on what your organization actually does. So here we have our advantages of corporate image investing. So distinctiveness, stakeholders, they recognize an organization with impact that's being favored, and with stakeholders, you avoid conflicting images and messages. So your corporate identity. Originally, corporate identity focused on logos and visual design. Now it encompasses all forms of communication, not just outward embodiment of company, but also intrinsic characteristics, traits of company that provide specificity. So you want to keep that in mind when you're working with your corporate identity and understanding what it is. And here's a model from Burke and Stadler of corporate identity, which shows behavior, communication, and symbolism, and this is the corporate personality. So all three of these make up the corporate personality in its own. And your corporate image management adds an important symbolic dimension to corporate communication. So that's why it's important to make sure to have a good corporate image. So in this class, we're going to really look into how we communicate in a corporation and how we can create and keep that positive image. And here, this is your corporate identity in relation to corporate reputation. Your book talks a little bit about it more in detail, and I'd like you guys to have a good understanding of what this is, and the next slide as well for the corporate identity in relation to corporate reputation. Make sure to review this, have a good understanding of what it means, along with the monolithic, endorsed, and branded identities as well. Your book discusses all three of these in detail as well. So let's look at the types of identity structure. So here we can see the three different types of structure I just discussed. So you have monolithic. This is single, all-embracing identity, such as Sony, BMW, Virgin, and Philips. These are products that all carry the same corporate name. Then you have endorsed. Businesses and product brands are endorsed or badged with the parent company name. General Motors, they own Ford, but it's called GM. Kellogg, Nestle, Cadbury, and so on. And then branded individual businesses or product brands each carry their own name, such as, Procter & Gamble here, Dove, and so on and so on. So aligning identity, image, and reputation, the importance of alignments between the organizational culture as experienced by employees. You want your employees to be comfortable working where they're at. You want to have a good culture in your organization because remember, employees are stakeholders, and stakeholders communicate with other people to discuss how the organization is being ran. So here's a toolkit to assess the alignment between vision, culture, and image. So you can see you have vision, image, and culture. So the employees make up the culture, the managers create the vision, and then of course the stakeholders are the image of the organization. And you can see as it turns here, you're going to have more of a gap moving forward. So you have your three toolkit elements. You have vision, culture, and image. So vision is senior management's aspirations for the organization. Culture is the organization's values is felt and shared by all employees of the organization. And image is the image or impression that outside stakeholders have of the organization. So going back here, you can see where these each fall into place. So the interface between vision and image. So when you're looking at the interface for vision and culture, you need to understand, does the organization practice the values it promotes? Does the organization's vision inspire all its subcultures? And are the organization's vision and culture sufficiently differentiated from those of its competitors? These are things that you need to keep in mind when you're looking at the vision and culture. And of course, who are the organization's stakeholders? It's always good to understand who the stakeholders are and what kind of role that they play in the organization and what do they want from the organization as well, and is the organization effectively communicating its vision to its stakeholders.